For several decades, Africa has hosted more peacekeeping operations than any other region in the world. But what happens when the continent has to lead those efforts itself? What are Africa-led peace support operations? And what is the future for peacekeeping in Africa? Hi, I'm Angela Muvumba Sellström from the Nordic Africa Institute, and I'm here in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, with Tefesehet Hailu from Amani, Africa.
We're here to find out what African-led peacekeeping missions look like, how they can resolve the current conflict situations, and how they could evolve. We're here at the AU headquarters. We're actually right outside the Political Affairs, Peace and Security Department. We're here to talk with Adebayo Kareem, who is the coordinator for the Compliance Unit within the Peace Support Operations Division.
If you look at the continent of Africa, look at where we are in the Horn of Africa, you would notice that the activities of the Al-Shabaab in Somalia, look at what happens in the DRC in Goma, look at the Sahel. So the continent, unfortunately, continue to be ravaged by these international conflict. Many of the UN missions in the continent, in Mali, in some other part of the continent, you find that given the way they were configured, they were not able to react to the demand of the particular theaters that they were in. AU, on the other hand, we can use force, and theoretically, we don't need the consent to go into a particular country. If you may remember, our Constitutive Act actually has allow us to actually make intervention if certain parameters are met. We are much more configured to confront asymmetric tactics than the UN are.
But this kind of mandate comes at a price.
When the UN left Somalia, we must not forget that country then became a no man's land and affecting international global commerce with piracy in the Red Sea. So African Union was then asked to come in. Now it was a very deadly theater to go into, and we were able to bring stability into that country. But in doing so, we lost and continue to lose quite a lot of our young Africans. Like I said before, no UN mission can sustain the amount of people that we have lost in that theater. So you could say the readiness to commit people and the willingness to die for a cause is actually the African leadership actually committing to that. That is why if you look at our missions, we have probably suffered more casualties and fatalities in Somalia alone than the UN had suffered in the more than 70 years of existence.
For me, what stood out the most was how many troops died in only the AU mission in Somalia compared to the UN mission.
It's clear how much the world has changed since the golden era of peacekeeping in the 1990s. In order to better understand the challenges that have been addressed and those that remain, it's helpful to get some insight to the historical background of peacekeeping and to conflicts more generally. Few people are better placed to provide this perspective than Vasu, Gounden, founder and executive director of the African Center for the Constructive Resolution of Disputes, also known as ACCORD.
Traditional peacekeeping evolved in an interstate conflict paradigm to bring peace between two states and keep the peace. Two states accountable to the United Nations, they follow the rules of war, the Geneva Convention.
As conflicts became increasingly transnational and economically sustained, the traditional peacekeeping model, built around mediation between clearly defined parties, began to lose relevance in many contexts. In response, the African Union and regional organizations have gradually begun developing their own approaches to peace support. One of the earliest examples of a regional African force intervening militarily was the ECOMOG mission, created to stop the civil war in Liberia and Sierra Leone. It was launched by the Economic Community of West African States in 1990, even before the African Union had been formed. In 2003, the newly formed African Union launched its first attempt at a continental peace operation, AMIB, during the later stages of the civil war in Burundi. A year later began the African Union's mission to Darfur, Sudan, under the name of AMIS. It struggled with logistics and financing and exposed the limits of capacity and the need for UN partnership. AMISOM, the African Union's mission in Somalia, proved the AU's operational endurance. Through its robust peace support against the armed group of Al-Shabaab, it marked a definitive shift from peacekeeping to peace enforcement and stabilization. More recently, AMISOM was transitioned into a new mission, ATMIS. The aim was not only to fight Al-Shabaab, but to gradually hand over security responsibilities to Somali forces. It reflects a broader shift in African peace support, from open-ended deployments toward missions designed to support political transitions and national ownership. Today's fighting groups like Boko Haram in the Lake Chad Basin, Al-Shabaab in the Horn of Africa, and Jamaat Nusrat al-Islam wal-Muslimin in the Sahel exploit porous frontiers. They have international affiliates and alliances that support them with weapons and money, and they are able to exploit weak state presence through their networks. Their operations turn local conflicts into regional security crises. As African peace operations evolved, so too did the doctrine guiding them. The African Union refers to these missions as peace support operations, a broader concept than traditional peacekeeping. AU operations can be given robust mandates, allowing them to use force to protect civilians and stabilize conflict areas. At the same time, military deployments are intended to support wider political efforts, including mediation, governance reform, and peace building. In this sense, peace support operations combine military action with diplomatic and political tools, reflecting Africa's effort to respond to complex conflicts in new ways. So what does Africa-led peace support actually mean? Africa-led peace support operations are missions mandated, authorized, or carried out by African institutions or coalitions of African states to respond to conflict and instability. Some are led directly by the African Union, others by regional organizations. But in practice, Africa-led peace support also means something more.
The ability to have a sense of ownership in a mandate and having to work with member states to be able to shape the mandate of a mission, to be able to understand the context and the environment on the continent to be able to deploy a mission. The ability to also understand a nuanced context for a specific country and then to determine how it would actually deploy a mission and develop a mandate around it. In terms of an AU-led operation, linking it and integrating it into other elements of the African Union, working jointly in terms of the peace-building component, preventive diplomacy missions, etc., that are happening. So connecting them beyond just a peacekeeping mission per se.
So what is the comparative advantage of African actors like the AU versus international actors? We asked Dawit Yohannes, a senior researcher at the Institute for Security Studies.
African regional actors and continental actors, they know the terrain, let's say the political intricacies and the political context of most of the continent. But we also have to be very careful in terms of not to have this generalized notions that one actor is more legitimate than the others in the broader sense.
In this first episode, we've explored how African-led peace support operations reflect both sacrifice and transformation. From UN-led peacekeeping to the AU's more robust enforcement, peace operations are adapting to structural change, reshaping how the international community can respond to war.